Hi, I'm your Gemini friend. So this video is going to be about Chiron in Virgo and Chiron in the 6th house. I have Chiron in Virgo. So the thing with Chiron is that Virgo is actually naturally ruled by Chiron. There is an argument for this. And the way I see it, as far as balancing that energy of Neptune in the 12th house, Chiron actually fulfills this role better than Mercury does. But I'll get to it in this video to try to explain why while I'm going over this placement, and hopefully by the end it will make sense. So whether you have Chiron in Virgo or Chiron in the 6th house, what I'm talking about, this overall energy will be relevant, but if it's in Virgo, think of Virgo as the personality, the embodiment of your Chiron and the way that it acts, the way that it behaves. Chiron in the 6th house deals with these Chiron things happening in the area of life that the 6th house represents, which I will get into more, but this is all about our day-to-day maintenance. It's about habits, routine, taking care of things, the mundane, and finding significance in that. Recognizing the importance of that. Virgo energy is really underappreciated. It truly is that behind the scenes, get done what needs to be done, praise and admiration not necessary. Virgo will get it done anyway. But we have to think, as astrology is, connected to spirituality, and what sign and house represents spirituality more than Pisces and the 12th house, the opposite of Virgo. This is all about the balance between what we are experiencing here in the material world, within our human lifetimes on Earth. The significance of the balance between the spiritual experience and the material physical experience is really highly representative of what Chiron is, what it stands for. And I do offer personal natal chart readings and synastry readings. If you're interested in that, information is in the description, as well as a video that goes much more deeply into Chiron and what it represents within us. But before I really get into this Virgo 6th house, what it represents within your specific chart, the placement, I want to talk about Chiron and Virgo just a little bit, because if you understand this concept and why it ties into both Chiron and Virgo so nicely, then really any Chiron placement makes a bit more sense. So Chiron itself is in between Saturn and Uranus. In the description and in my Chiron video, I also mentioned the book that has gotten me so deep into this Chiron energy by Barbara Hand Clow. And she so beautifully explains this concept of how Chiron is the bridge between Saturn, the material struggle, the challenges and lessons that come with Saturn, and what that represents within our life. Saturn and its nature is limited. It essentially keeps us grounded. It forces us to have to focus on, okay, we have to support ourselves. We have to be doing something with our lives. It creates challenges so that we can overcome them, but it's very much attached to the material world and this experience that we're having. Whereas Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, the outer planets, represent, because they're slow moving, more people are going to have the same sign of Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. They're collective energies, things that we experience on a greater scale, as opposed to the personal planets. The planets closer to the sun, they're more representative of our specific identities in this lifetime. So how Chiron creates this bridge between the Saturn material and the Uranus, the higher calling, our dreams and aspirations and our connection to other people. Chiron forces us to integrate these earthly lessons with what is more spiritually significant. It's like the link between them. And I like to think of it as the 6th house is the last of the first 6 houses that represent more of the self, more inward, while houses 7 through 12 are more outward. They're dealing with our relationships and our role out in the world. So even where Virgo and the 6th house fall within the zodiac is perfect. It's linking them together. Okay, now I'm going to get into how this can actually manifest within your life and what it means to have this wounded healer energy in Virgo or the 6th house. It truly is Chiron in its most natural energy. And in this way, it's actually a lot less complicated. So how does this typically manifest? Virgo energy is highly associated with perfectionism, with having very high standards, and wanting to achieve, the best that we can possibly do the best job possible. However, it's so improvement oriented that it's always looking around, whether it is external or internal, for things to fix. So this can come with an unending feeling of just not feeling like you're good enough, feeling that there's always something that you need to improve, that you just can't rest. So the biggest things that can come with this are being very self-critical, having unrealistic expectations for yourself, for situations, for the outcome, and this very persistent feeling of just constant inadequacy, burnout, overworking, overcompensating for this feeling of not feeling like you're doing enough or being enough by working even harder. It can be very difficult with this energy to take care of yourself. It can be so much easier, since Virgo energy is so service oriented, to take care of other people. But of course, this depletes our own energy. This can tie your self-worth entirely to how good you think you are, how perfect you are, and like seeing your potential, but in a negative way, where it's like, oh, why can't I be that now? Focusing more on the future. And when it comes to this energy, this incredible thing that the book really helped me to understand is that when Virgo is in its most positive, the highest expression, it's not overly focused on the result and keeping that perfect result. It's actually in the flow. It's focused on the process. And that's what Virgo is about. And the sixth house, this is the process. It's about how we get things done, not what we're getting done. I also like to think of all of the earth houses, the second house being like the initial goal. The 10th house is how we achieve that goal, but the sixth house is the process. That's definitely simplifying it a lot, but this is where we are taking the Saturn strict perfectionism, holding us down, making us feel like we need to be cautious about things, like we need to be careful and take them very step by step. There's nothing wrong with that. Saturn Capricorn energy understands that the more quality your work is, the more quality your result is going to be. And that's not inherently unhealthy, but it certainly can be when there is such a strong focus on getting things right and keeping them right, keeping them perfect, which is just stressful within itself. The sixth house is about maintenance, but if you're constantly trying to maintain a perfect result, you're not really allowing yourself to be human, things to be flawed the way that they just naturally are. But with the Saturn discipline, we need to feel a sense of purpose, to feel like what we're doing is actually worth doing. And with this Chiron process, bridging that Saturn to Uranus, Uranus is all about the flow. It's an electric energy. It is the current, the flow between all of us. There is a connection. It's very collectively focused on like where we're all headed at the same time, the progress of humanity. This is where the sense of purpose comes in, because Chiron can show us our role within that. It can show us who we're meant to be as a healer and how we can affect others. But that Uranus flow combined with the Saturn discipline is where you get the Chiron process, because to be in the flow of the process is what the focus should be on rather than keeping that result. Okay, I'm gonna go more into, I'm really getting hung up on this because this is what Chiron is all about. But let's see, if you have Chiron in your sixth house, this can absolutely lead to overworking, feeling like you need to do more and more and more because you're feeling like less and less. But in reality, what you need to do is figure out why you're even judging yourself by these standards, why you've even created these limitations for yourself, why you've even created these standards in the first place. We can balance this Virgo 6th house energy with Pisces 12th house in the way of compassion, acceptance, accepting our flaws. Biggest thing you can do here is accept and allow your flaws. Because with this, you're not going to be somebody who lets things get sloppy in the first place. It's important to ease up on yourself. That doesn't mean that you're not going to do a poor job. Doing a good job is inherent to you. This comes with such a natural skill with like attention to detail, really getting a process down and appreciating like the little meticulous things that go into it. This is such a supportive and positive energy in any environment when it's expressed in a healthy way, because you come across as so capable, like you can handle anything. And you probably know that you can handle anything, but if we exhaust ourselves, if we deplete our resources, then we can't handle just anything. So the balance of hard work, rest hard too. We can't always be working, and we can't punish ourselves for not having the stamina that we think we should have. And when it comes to self-punishment, that is huge with Virgo and 6th house energy. And honestly, we can find creative ways to punish ourselves, and also deeply painful ways, because this is very much attached to our sense of value in the world and like what we have to offer because of that focus on supporting and service. But when you have Chiron in this energy, it definitely supports to a path of service in some way. It can be very much your own personal way, but feeling like you're helping people, feeling like you are improving a situation can be greatly healing. But that needs to be coming from a place of understanding that you don't need to be perfect. And if you do make a mistake, it's not the end of the world. Exposing yourself to situations where you can make mistakes can be very helpful here, because we can really put so much pressure on ourselves, so much responsibility. We will take on anything that someone asks of us because it can feel like, oh, well, I can, so I should. So as far as being like an employee, working a more traditional job, it is seriously so important that you don't burn yourself out, because this can be this sort of situation where your boss might know like, okay, I can always rely on that person. And then you know what they say, where sometimes the reward for being good at your job is just more work. That is so applicable with this. And another thing that can come with this energy that is really so hard is your ability to delegate and give other people tasks to do. There can be like no trust in other people to get it down the same way that you will, to create the same result as you. So this can feel very isolating and like you have to do everything independently because you have your process and you know the way that you're gonna do it, and you can only trust you. It can feel like everything is on your shoulders. But if you can get to the point where you are able to delegate, you're likely somebody who is incredibly good at actually pairing somebody up with the sort of task that they would be good at. This is wonderful for leadership within really anything that takes like process and method, any sort of work, especially meticulous work, detail-oriented work. There's just a natural skill here. And yes, others might not be as naturally oriented towards those things as you, but that doesn't mean that they don't deserve a chance or that you can't teach it to them. Having patience with yourself and with other people can be really big here, because there can be a strong expectation to be as perfect as you possibly can immediately without any practice. Like it's your first time and you expect the best out of yourself, which, I mean, that can be a good sort of exposing yourself to the potential of making mistakes sort of situation. Try new things. Just make sure that you're not gonna beat yourself up if you don't do them exactly right the first time. Because one thing with 6th house energy is that it can get very caught up in routine. It can feel unstable and insecure when it does not know what is happening next. This is very planning, predicting energy. So unless you have something like Uranus on the cusp of your 6th house, Uranus in your 6th house, various different things can, of course, your specific makeup is going to change how this is expressed within you, but that core nervousness with not knowing exactly what to expect is kind of always here. But one thing that you can do to really get in that more Uranus-inspired flow is to embrace and accept what makes you unique and what makes other people unique. Because if you have a process just down perfectly, you know every step and you can do it with your eyes closed, somebody else could do the same thing and maybe even get just as good a results, but doing it their own way. So this rigidity that can come with this placement, where we like don't allow ourselves to do anything outside of the lines, and we don't want to see anybody else doing something in a way that we haven't like pre-approved or we're not sure it's going to work out. Experimentation can be very freeing here, but it doesn't come naturally to Virgo energy. It's important to look at the result, whatever it is that we are trying to maintain and keep perfect. How are we tying this to our identity or our self-worth? What does it mean to make a mistake? What does it mean to create something less than the absolute most perfect version. This energy is always going to desire the best version. And that doesn't mean that getting something perfect is wrong, but it is very important to check within yourself how you feel about it, how it makes you feel about you, and whether this is coming from a place of like a desperate need to get it right, or a very like pleasant personal desire to do your best. There's a big difference between enjoying what you do, valuing your result, and feeling good about yourself, being proud of that, and forcing yourself to continue working over and over and over, punishing yourself when you make a mistake, never allowing yourself to rest, because this is a really highly resilient and durable energy to have, so it can actually be hard to even notice when maybe you actually are exhausted, but you've just been existing in this state for years and years and years, so you're used to it. Like, is that fulfilling? Do you feel healthy? Health is huge. With both Virgo and 6th house energy, health is so important because we are all in human bodies in this lifetime and we have to maintain them. And there can be a great love for this maintenance. I mean, any sort of like repetitive, really hands-on tasks that you enjoy, going about them with love, they're wonderful things for you. This really harnesses the positive expression of this energy. But if you're not enjoying yourself, even if you're like deceiving yourself, like, no, I'm fine, it is important to check and make sure that everything is in balance, that your health feels right and everything is good, because there can be a sort of like sick, self-sacrificial element to this where we can feel like the more exhausted, the more run down we are, we must be really successful in life because we're exhausted. Like hustle culture, the way that that feeds into the worst side of this energy, it's just something to pay attention to. You shouldn't have to get used to suffering because if any sign can get used to suffering, it's Virgo. But that doesn't mean that it has to. It doesn't mean that you have to. And it absolutely does not mean that you deserve it. If you made a mistake 3 years ago and you're still making up this routine that you have to do in order to, you know what I'm saying? This can be like coming up with all sorts of completely arbitrary rules for yourself. Like, if I don't do this, then I don't deserve this. That is a horrible mindset to have, and I completely understand it. I mean, I highly associate this placement with health issues and that feeling of like punishing yourself and getting a result that looks good on the outside, but you're dying on the inside, is very representative of the negative side of this energy. Because you have to understand that your value as a person is not tied to what you're doing. It's not even tied to what you can do. It should be inherent. You have value and you will continue to have value regardless of whether or not you're able to continue to do the thing that you put all your value on. Like, anything could happen. And I don't mean that in a negative way. I just mean like your worth and your sense of who you are and feeling good about yourself shouldn't rely entirely on something external to you. And there's no need to identify with what is meant to change anyway. Everything is changing, always. Nothing stays the same. And Virgo, in its more difficult expression, can be so rigid that it wants to keep things really perfect and structured, but Virgo is a mutable sign. It's actually meant to really harness this flow and the process, and it is adaptable. It can roll with the punches, it can flow. It's really meant to. It is the mutable earth sign. It's the one that really has that willingness and desire to look at the situation and do what's necessary. So it's really interesting to me the way that it can feel so fixed sometimes. But if you have Chiron in Virgo or 6th house energy, you are absolutely meant to heal other people. It's very intrinsic to who you are, though on what level and, to what degree, it's gonna totally vary. But whether it has to do with helping people in a literal health-related way or hands-on healing. The 6th house is very much associated with the hands and things that you can do with your hands, tangible ways of taking care of things. But sometimes even just sharing our story, our awareness and attention with another person can be healing. And that's where the real satisfaction and purpose comes in with this placement. In first, extremely radical self-acceptance. Embrace your flaws. Anything that you can't change about yourself, don't get hung up on it. Find a way to love it. I absolutely know how hard that can be because we come up with all sorts of weird rules and standards and reasons why certain things aren't good enough and the idea of what the perfect thing is. But consider, look outwards, use that Neptune energy to look at what is perfect to other people. Your idea of a perfect whatever is likely not going to be exactly the same as somebody else's. And is their opinion valid? Yes. Yours is too, but so is your flaw. Your flaws are valid, so allow them. And the more comfortable you can get with the idea of being imperfect, it's so freeing. It is so incredibly freeing to feel like you can exist in this world as yourself without constantly looking for what can be improved or for what's wrong with you, because there's nothing wrong with you. The only things that are wrong with us are the things that are not even true to us that we've taken on. And last thing I want to say is that let others help you. This is such it's so selfless that it becomes very self-focused in a way where you can feel like you're the only one who can get a job done. And you can feel like asking someone for help is shameful. You can feel guilty. You can feel like it's not worth it to ask. You're worth asking for help. Any problem that you have, the people who care about you, they want to know how you're doing and they want to be able to help. It's very likely that people who love you can see the struggle and they want to be able to be there for you, but they don't know what to do because you likely come across as very self-sufficient, very closed off to outside aid. So the more you can open up and like warm up to the idea of allowing people to help you, allowing them to take care of you sometimes, that can be so very healing too, because to feel how it feels to be taken care of creates even more value in your own ability to take care of other people, because you can understand from a personal perspective how it feels to be taken care of. If this makes sense, it's kind of circular the way I'm explaining that, but you can't do everything alone. You're not meant to. And that is the nature of this Chiron energy, is to understand what we can do on our own, what we are capable of, what we can build with Saturn, what discipline can actually achieve. But also Chiron healing our connection to other people and the ways that we support each other, and it gives us a reason to work for what we're working for. We are creating this world not only for ourselves, it's for everybody. And of course we have our different ways of getting along with different people, but like we are all in this together to whatever degree you want to be included. I mean, it's up to you, but having this placement is a sign that you are naturally a healer. You're somebody whose energy can contribute so much, and really without even realizing you're contributing so much. This is such an underappreciated, even to ourselves. We will not appreciate what we've done. We'll just keep you looking towards the future, like, okay, well, what's next? What can I do to be even better next time? Instead of stopping and like celebrating a little bit, be proud of yourself, pat yourself on the back, give yourself a little hug or some sort of prize. You did it, an achievement award. Celebrate your wins. Embrace your flaws and really practice self-care. Practice keeping yourself in the optimal state, which is going to be so personal to you. Whatever self-care is, it's so personal to us. It's what makes us feel more like ourselves. Those things that are very personal to us, that might not mean anything to anybody else, but to us, we enjoy them. We feel better afterwards. Focus on those activities that make you feel nourished, because you are absolutely worth taking care of. So that's what I have to say here. I'm a little bit rambly at the beginning, but I feel like this is just all so tied to Chiron overall, and I love it. I love the understanding that I'm getting very slowly as I work through all of these Chiron energies in each sign and house. And I'm so open to feedback. Please let me know if you have this placement, if you have anything to say about it. I'm really, really curious. And I really appreciate you watching these videos. And thank you so much for all of the kind things that everybody is saying. I really, 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 really appreciate it. And I value every single one of you so much. Thank you. I love you. Bye.